Hello and welcome to this special edition of The Week in Europe. In this program we start our countdown to the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain. We start our journey here in Vienna. Up until 1989, the Austrian capital was the last outpost of the Western world in Central Europe. The Iron Curtain ran literally 50 kilometers away from here, sealing off Eastern Europe from the rest of the continent. Well, precisely in this show we'll take you to the other side. We'll cross the border to Slovakia. Bratislava, as you will see, it's now become a vibrant capital city at the heart of a reunited Europe. But first, let's go back to the 40s. Well, soon after the Second World War, and because of its strategic location, the city had become a playground of Cold War politics. The communist USSR and its satellites on the one hand, the Western world on the other. And because it hosts a series of international organizations, Vienna also logically became a magnet for secret agents from East and West. This was a place where they could go about their undercover activities in relative obscurity. This mysterious atmosphere was the ideal backdrop for the 1949 blockbuster The Third Man, a tense thriller story set in Vienna. Well, we're now in what's called UN City, and you can see some UN institutions behind me, among others the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Now, some 20 years later, the Cold War is of course over, and yet Vienna remains a spying hub. According to certain experts, the city has got the highest density of secret agents in the whole world. This is a report from our correspondent Valérie Labonne.
Vienna, a city devastated and divided, a city captured in The Third Man, a film noir that illustrated the simmering war between Western and Eastern spies. At the edge of both blocks, Austria became the continent's spying capital. With the fall of the wall, the game changed, but didn't disappear.
After 1989, especially with the great conflicts, Kosovo and Palestinian and Israeli conflict and Iraq, there came agents to Austria, but now there is some kind of transformation from the political intelligence to the economic espionage.
At the end of the war, neutral Austria became a candidate for international agencies such as the UN headquarters and the Atomic Energy Agency, strategic sites and posts. The city houses some 1,700 diplomats and aides, half of which, experts say, are linked to the secret services. An interesting playing field for the Middle Eastern powers, among them Iran, which in '89 had Kurdish opposition leader Abdul Rahman Ghassemlu assassinated in the very heart of Vienna. Agents here are often identified, but rarely troubled.
They don't have to be afraid of Austrian authorities. They feel safe here, and they shouldn't feel safe here. And that's the major issue.
And these are hardly isolated incidents. Russia's Federal Security Service keeps an eye on Chechen refugees with the Austrian government's support under cover of the fight against terrorism. Some even suspect the authorities of collusion with these countries. Through its energy management agency, Austria is thought to have invested hundreds of thousands of euros in a gas extraction system in Iran. One other explanation for such lenience could also be the war raging within the Austrian secret services.
25 years ago, we had one united military secret service. And then it was split into two because the Socialist Party wanted its own secret service and the Conservative Party wanted its own secret service. And they got it. That's strange enough, but that's Austria.
The last case to date is the attempted kidnapping of the former head of Kazakhstan's secret services a year ago. The Austrian parliament opened an inquest into the affair. The country is aware that for years to come it will remain a setting for foreign operations. Some therefore are pushing for reform to strengthen the Austrian secret services and the parliament's control over it.
We're still in Vienna, and behind me you can see the town hall. Now you just need to open a phone directory to realize that Vienna has become a melting pot. Polish, Hungarian, Czech, Slovak family names are all a testimony to the impact of immigration on Vienna. And now, more recently, of course, with the fall of communism, even more people from the Ukraine, former Yugoslavia, but also from neighboring countries have chosen to settle down in Vienna. But as you will see in the next report, integration here is not always easy, also because Austria has got some of the harshest immigration laws in Europe.
20 years after the end of the Iron Curtain, Austria is still an El Dorado for the countries of Eastern Europe. A pathway into Western Europe, and for students, a place of prestige. Anna came here from Croatia to study in Vienna.
Every year, my parents have to set some of their money aside. Without that help, I would never have been able to come here to study.
Anna gets by without a grant, modelling on the side to make ends meet. She wants to return to her home country once she's got her hands on that diploma. For those wanting to stay in Austria, it's a different story, one of the countries in the EU with the strictest immigration laws. Maria is one of those trying to find a way in. She joined her Polish husband in Vienna 3 years ago. Now she comes to this centre for immigrants to find a way out of unemployment.
I'd like to work, but that's impossible for the moment because we can't get access to the labour market.
Any permit to work in Austria is hard to come by, especially for a housewife like Maria. She would have to be qualified and earn at least 2,000 euros a month. Her only way out, taking part in a programme that includes compulsory German courses, half of which she has to pay herself.
I want things to work out. I want our situation to get better. But if this goes on, we'll undoubtedly return to Poland. It's just too stressful living like this.
At the beginning of the 90s, the number of foreigners living in Austria almost doubled. Now many in the country fear another influx after the integration into the EU of many Eastern European countries. Free movement of labour within the EU has its exception in Austria. The influential far right wants to batten down the hatches.
As the problem still persists with a big difference in wage level between the countries, I would think it grossly unfair for the local working population to open the borders now and let free competition on the labour market inside.
The Schengen agreements mean more freedom of movement within large parts of the European Union. 60% of foreigners in Austria come from that area. The nation's outlook on immigration, an issue of heated debate.
We are on the way to have quite a strict system, and that's something that's not really good at the end, and we have to try to make it more fair and to make it better. But that's different under the political circumstances.
The grand dream of a harmonious European Union is still in the making, and the subject of immigration is maybe the thorniest of all.
Well, we're now in Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. We've just travelled from Vienna, Austria. This journey some 20 years ago would have been extremely complicated. It would have required special authorizations and documents. Nowadays, it takes you about 45 minutes. And it's very common for Austrians to cross the border. They come shopping in Slovakia because prices here are cheaper and the country has recently adopted the euro. Now, another thing which is striking about Slovakia is that young people here have become very apolitical. They want to look forward, they don't want to remember the communist past. This is a report from our correspondent Alexei Rosenzweig.
Tomasz Witek, who is 26, has just completed a documentary called November plus 20 about the Czechoslovak Revolution of 1989. He's hoping to have it screened in as many schools as possible to try to increase the young audience's awareness of their country's recent history.
Those of my generation and younger people know hardly anything about the events that transformed their country. This film has been especially made for them, so they can better understand what happened.
2 decades of capitalism have radically transformed Slovakia. Today's teenagers didn't experience communism, and for most of them, even the 17th of November is a date that means little.
November 17th? I just know it's a holiday.
I'm 22 and what I'm mainly interested in is decisions I have to make now for my future.
A lot of people of my generation are not interested in this because they have become individualistic and think about themselves first.
In November 1989, As Václav Havel was heading the democratic movement in Prague, the actor Milan Kňažko was one of the leaders of the Velvet Revolution in Bratislava.
In general, I think that young people are interested in other things than the Velvet Revolution or communism. They care about today, much less about history, and a little bit about the future maybe. This doesn't mean anything to them. They never experienced communism. They never experienced this regime. For them, it's more of an intellectual debate. Maybe when they grow older, they'll become more interested.
The nation's Memory Institute is making use of oral history and audiovisual materials in a bid to win the attention of young Slovaks.
We're trying to make them curious by producing DVDs featuring the stories of the victims of communism and testimonies from those who took part directly in the Velvet Revolution, which we screen in schools. That's what works best.
As well as this project, around November 17th, the Institute is holding events aimed at young people to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Velvet Revolution.
Well, that's it for this special edition of The Week in Europe. We'll leave you with this view of the emblematic bridge of Bratislava, the Novi Most. Now, on the other side, in a completely different style, you can see the old castle on the hill. Now, make sure you join us next week as we continue our journey across Europe to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Iron Curtain. But from now, from all of us here, goodbye.